Dispersed pleasantly about Oxford, the strangers, as the king and his court were called, tried at first to pretend that all was well in the land. In modern parlance, they were in denial. And this chap in particular, Endymion Porter, seemed determined to prove that nothing of significance had changed. Porter was a pampered courtier, a royal favourite. Before the Civil War, he'd been one of the king's main art buyers, a friend of artists and poets. There's a fine portrait of him in the Prado by Van Dyck, in which the suave Porter and Van Dyck himself buddy up together in an elegant oval. Porter saw himself as the king's Maecenas, a fixer and tastemaker. He's the embodiment of the smarmy royal lickspittle, clinging to the king's side like a barnacle to a ship's hull. When he wasn't collecting art or writing egregious plays, Porter loved to hunt. And when Dobson came to paint him in Oxford, it wasn't as a soldier or a dashing cavalier, but as an English squire, out hunting as if nothing had happened. Those people who admire William Dobson, and there aren't nearly enough of them, will generally tell you that this is his finest painting, Dobson's masterpiece, and it's definitely one of them. Porter stands there with his musket, while his page brings him the hare he's just shot. His loyal gun dog looks up adoringly. And to show what a fine patron of the arts Porter was, Dobson has placed a bust of Apollo, the god of the arts, at his shoulder. If you examine the symbolic figures on which he leans, you'll find embodiments of painting and sculpture and poetry. So all this stuff down here, this busy collection of symbols, has been put there to tell us what a cultured fellow Porter was, to advertise his great love of the arts. And all that is fascinating, of course. But what I find even more interesting about this picture is what it tells us about the way Dobson actually painted, the character of his art. Since Van Dyck painted Porter as well, we're in a position here to make a telling comparison. Van Dyck makes Porter thin and elegant. He brings out the greyhound in him. Dobson, meanwhile, puts a stone or so onto him, maybe even a couple of stone. He notices something English and beefy and robust about Porter. Dobson nearly always used a square canvas, and most of his sitters were painted from the knees up, from about here, which makes them look chunky and solid, like me. Van Dyck, on the other hand, was the master of the elegant full length. He preferred elongated canvases that made you look finer and taller. So the Van Dyck approach is back here, but the Dobson approach is here. Dobson's fine portrayal of Endymion Porter gives British art its first country gent. Red-faced and solid. But the leisurely rural mood he captures here couldn't and wouldn't last.